In the 41st millennium, there are no heroes. There are only warriors who die standing and cowards who die kneeling, and both serve the Imperium's endless hunger for bodies to throw against the dark. Faith reshapes reality. Will bends matter. The Emperor's psychic light holds back the tide of chaos through sheer conviction, sustained across 10,000 years. Every miracle requires sacrifice. Every victory demands oceans of blood. But what happens when something arrives that doesn't care about any of that? The rift opened above Segmentum Obscurus without warning. No warp signature. No Geller field collapse. No demon incursion or heretical summoning. The auger arrays of Naval Station Thaddeus registered only a momentary spatial anomaly, a punch of kinetic force so absurd it tore a hole between dimensions. Something fell through, trailing confused bureaucratic complaints about missing a supermarket sale. That something was a bald man in a yellow jumpsuit and a white cape, falling through the void with his arms crossed and an expression of mild annoyance. Saitama had been chasing a particularly fast monster through downtown Z City when his punch connected with something unexpected. Not the monster. That had evaporated instantly. No, his fist had struck a weak point in reality itself, a paper-thin barrier between universes that gave way like wet cardboard. One moment he was standing in a crater surrounded by cheering civilians. The next, he was tumbling through a kaleidoscope of impossible colors while his grocery coupons scattered into the void. He landed on the surface of an Imperial cargo hauler with enough force to crater the hull plating. Alarms shrieked. Servitors gibbered in binary panic. Tech priests invoked the Omnissiah's protection against this meteorite from hell. Saitama pulled himself out of the impact crater, brushed some space dust off his shoulder, and looked around. This doesn't look like the shopping district. The cargo hauler, the unending tithe, immediately went to high alert. Captain Horvath, a grizzled veteran of 40 years' service, stared at his picked screen in absolute incomprehension. The crater showed a man. Just a man. No armor, no void suit, no anything. Standing in hard vacuum, scratching his head like he'd gotten off at the wrong transit stop. "All batteries, open fire," Horvath ordered. "Target the thing. Emperor, preserve us. What in his name is that?" Las batteries swiveled, macro cannons aligned. The unending tithe unleashed enough firepower to level a city block. Saitama noticed the incoming weapons fire about the same time he noticed he could breathe. Weird. Space should be spacier, more vacuumy. He looked down at the glowing energy bolts converging on his position and caught one out of idle curiosity. The last round splashed against his palm like warm water. The macro cannon shell hit his chest and crumpled like aluminum foil, tumbling away without leaving so much as a scorch mark on his suit. "Oh," Saitama said to nobody in particular. "They're shooting at me." He hopped off the cargo hauler, a casual leap that carried him 300 meters through the void toward the weapons platform that seemed to be coordinating the attack. He landed on its forward sensor array with a metallic thud that resonated through every deck. Crewmen stumbled, servitors sparked and reset. In the command throne, Horvath watched his target velocity readings and felt something break in his understanding of physics. The bald man peered through the reinforced viewport directly at the bridge. His face showed no malice, no rage, just mild interest, like someone window shopping. "Seal the bridge," Horvath whispered. "Activate void shields. Signal Terra. Signal anybody. We have a—" He paused. What did they have? "We have contact with unknown Xenos entity. Extremely hostile. Requesting immediate—" Saitama tapped on the window. Once. Gently. The reinforced ceramite viewport, rated to withstand direct hits from assault cannon fire, spider-webbed from a single finger's pressure. Saitama frowned slightly and pulled his hand back. He hadn't meant to crack it. He was still getting used to whatever weird space rules applied here. Horvath made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his extremely short career. "Abandon ship. All hands, abandon ship. Initiate scuttle protocols." The unending tithe died professionally. Explosive bolts fired. Escape pods jettisoned in controlled sequence. The elderly cargo hauler's plasma core began its terminal overload, building toward a detonation that would vaporize everything within 10 kilometers. Saitama felt the heat building beneath him. He'd felt nuclear fireballs before. They tickled. But this seemed like it might be rude to the people fleeing in those little capsules. He crouched, calculated trajectory by instinct, and punched downward. The punch didn't connect with anything solid. It just pushed. Air that shouldn't exist in void. Pressure that defied vacuum. Kinetic force that reality reluctantly accepted because it had no choice. The dying ship lurched sideways, spinning away from the escape pod cluster on a new trajectory that would carry it safely into empty space before detonation. In his escape pod, Horvath watched his ship, his home for 4 decades, cartwheel away like a discarded toy. The explosion came 30 seconds later, a brief sun that faded to nothing. And there, floating in the aftermath, was the bald man, still just standing there, in vacuum, looking around like he'd lost his keys. The distress signal reached Naval Station Thaddeus 14 minutes later. It reached Inquisitorial assets in the sector 2 hours after that. Within a day, half the Ordo Xenos in Segmentum Obscurus knew about the invulnerable entity that defied every law of nature and the Emperor's divine order. Within a week, Saitama had been classified as a threat level that required entirely new nomenclature. Not demon, not Xenos, not heretical construct, just impossible. He spent that week drifting through local space, trying to figure out if anyone had directions to the nearest planet. He was getting pretty hungry. The grocery coupons were definitely ruined. When the Inquisition finally found him, he was sitting on a dead asteroid, chin in hand, staring at a distant star with an expression of profound boredom. He didn't know it yet, but he'd just become the Imperium's greatest mystery. And in the 41st millennium, mysteries were either solved with faith and fire, or they destroyed you. Saitama just hoped somebody here sold eggs. He had a recipe he wanted to try. If you crave stories of cosmic collisions where unstoppable meets immovable, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to impossible truths in the Dark Millennium. Now, The Inquisition closes in on a man who cannot be categorized, cannot be controlled, and absolutely cannot be defeated by conventional means. What happens when faith confronts something that simply doesn't care? The inquisitorial cruiser, adamant truth translated from warp space with the precision of a predator stalking wounded prey. Inquisitor Cassandra Vale stood on the observation deck, her augmetic eye cycling through spectrums as it locked onto the impossible figure sitting on asteroid K7739. 20 years hunting demons, Xenos infiltrators, and heretical abominations had taught her to recognize threats by their psychic signature, their warp resonance, their corruption. The figure on the asteroid had none of those things. Her psyker, a sanctioned witch named Erasmus, who'd served her faithfully for a decade, had collapsed screaming when asked to read the entity. "It's not blank," Erasmus had gasped from the medici bay. "Blanks are absence. Pariahs are negative space. It's like looking at a wall. Just a wall. No depth. No dimensions beyond the physical. But Inquisitor," his voice had dropped to a terrified whisper, "the wall is strong enough to hold back the warp itself." Vale watched Saitama through the viewport. He was examining a piece of rock with apparent fascination, turning it over in his hands. She'd reviewed Captain Horvath's pict feeds 100 times. Watched those weapons' impacts splash harmlessly. Watched that casual punch redirect a dying starship. The cogitators estimated the kinetic force required. The estimates were astronomical, literally. "Deploy combat servitors," she ordered. "Extreme prejudice protocols. I want full sensory data on its defensive capabilities." Her tech priest, Magos Ven, tilted his metal-encased head. "Inquisitor, the entity shows no hostile intent. Perhaps communication before. It survived hard vacuum and macro-cannon fire without armor," Vale interrupted. "It redirected a plasma detonation with its bare hands. Either it's the most dangerous thing we've ever encountered, or..." She paused. "Actually, there is no or. Deploy the servitors." 6 combat servitors jetted from the Adamant Truth's launch bay, their augmetic limbs bristling with integrated weaponry. Heavy bolters, plasma cannons, melter cutters, enough firepower to crack open a space marine. They surrounded Saitama in a perfect hexagonal formation, targeting reticules painting his bald head crimson. Saitama looked up from his rock. "Oh, hey. Do you guys know where I can get some food? I've been drifting for like a week and..." The servitors opened fire. Bolt rounds exploded against his chest, his face, his outstretched hand. Plasma bolts superheated the space around him. Melter beams, capable of liquefying tank armor, washed over his yellow suit without singeing a single fiber. The barrage continued for 30 seconds of concentrated destruction that would have annihilated a dreadnought. When the smoke cleared, Saitama was still sitting on the asteroid, one hand raised to shield his eyes from the brightness. His expression had shifted from confused to mildly annoyed. "Okay, that was rude," he said. He stood up, cape fluttering in the non-existent solar wind. "I just asked for directions." He moved. To the servitors' combat cogitators, he simply vanished. One moment he was 300 meters away. The next, he was standing beside Servitor 7, gently pushing its heavy bolter aside. "You're going to hurt someone with..." The servitor's combat protocols overrode everything. At point-blank range, it fired its integrated plasma cannon directly at Saitama's face. The plasma bolt hit. Contained plasma, hot as a small star, erupted against his nose. Saitama blinked. Once, the plasma dissipated. His face remained unmarked. His expression now genuinely annoyed. "Seriously?" He flicked the servitor's armored torso with his finger. The combat servitor, 40 tons of reinforced adamantium and sacred machinery, crumpled like paper. Its fusion core ruptured, its limbs scattered. The explosion consumed 3 other servitors in a chain reaction of catastrophic failure. Saitama looked at his finger, then at the wreckage. "Oops, I didn't mean to. I barely touched it." The 2 surviving servitors processed this data for 0.03 seconds, before recalculating threat assessment to absolute maximum and engaging emergency retreat protocols. They burned their thrusters at full power, fleeing toward the adamant truth. On the bridge, Vale watched her combat servitors, machines that had torn through orc warbands and chaos cultists, flee like frightened children. One hadn't even made it back. The bald man had destroyed it with a finger flick, not a punch, not a strike, a flick. "Get me a Vox channel," she said quietly. "Direct communication." Mago Sven manipulated the communications array. A moment later, his voice crackled into the void on all frequencies. "Unknown entity. This is Inquisitor Cassandra Vale of the Ordo Xenos, acting with the Emperor's authority. Identify yourself immediately." Saitama perked up. A voice. Finally. He looked around for the source, spotted the large Gothic ship with all the skull decorations, and waved. "Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Saitama. I'm kind of lost. Do you have any food? Or maybe directions to the nearest..." "You have violated Imperial space," Vale interrupted, her voice hardening. "You have destroyed Imperial property. You register as no known Xenos, demon, or abhuman variant. By the authority vested in me by the God Emperor of mankind, you will submit to immediate detention and interrogation." Saitama scratched his head. "God Emperor? That sounds important. Look, I don't want any trouble. I'm just trying to find..." "Compliance is not optional." "A grocery store. Do you guys have grocery stores?" Vale felt her augmetic eye twitch. The entity, Saitama, he'd called himself, was either supremely confident or genuinely stupid. Neither option was acceptable. She activated the ship's forward lance batteries. "You have 10 seconds to surrender. After that, you will be classified as hostile and terminated with extreme prejudice." Saitama sighed. This was always how it went. Monster shows up, he helps people, they still get scared. At least back home, they'd stopped shooting him. Usually. He planted his feet on the asteroid and called out, "I really don't think you want to..." The lance strike hit before he could finish. A beam of concentrated energy, powerful enough to crack continental plates, burned across the distance between ship and asteroid. It struck Saitama dead center. The asteroid beneath him vaporized. The space around him superheated to temperatures that would ignite atmosphere if atmosphere existed. Energy readings spiked so high that Magos Ven's instruments briefly registered infinity before resetting. When the beam cut off, Saitama was floating in the debris field, his cape smoldering slightly. He patted out the ember with one hand. The cape was the only thing that had taken any damage, and even that was just cosmetic. "Okay," he said, his voice somehow carrying across the void to the Adamant Truth's external Vox receivers. "Now, I'm actually annoyed." He bent his knees, drew back his fist, and punched in the direction of the inquisitorial cruiser. He wasn't trying to hit them. He'd aimed deliberately wide. The punch created a shockwave in vacuum that shouldn't have existed. A ripple of kinetic force that screamed past the Adamant Truth's port side, missing by 2 kilometers. In its wake, 3 asteroids simply ceased to exist. Obliterated, not cracked or shattered, erased. The shockwave continued into deep space, where it would eventually dissipate after traveling for millions of kilometers. On the bridge, every alarm activated simultaneously. Servitors wailed, tech priests invoked the Omnissiah, and Inquisitor Cassandra Vale, who had faced down greater demons without flinching, gripped her command throne and stared at the data. He'd missed on purpose, a warning shot, and that warning shot had contained enough force to destroy her ship 1,000 times over. "Establish communication again," she whispered. Tell him we will discuss terms." Saitama, floating in space with his arms crossed, just looked bored. The journey to Terra took 3 weeks through the warp, and Saitama spent most of it confused about why everyone kept staring at him. The Adamant Truth had extended what Inquisitor Vale called an invitation to Holy Terra for diplomatic assessment. Saitama had accepted mostly because they'd mentioned Terra had food. He'd been given quarters in the detention section, not as a prisoner, Vale had carefully explained, but for mutual security. The quarters were a reinforced cell designed to hold psychically active prisoners. Saitama thought it was cozy, small, but he'd lived in smaller apartments. What confused him was the constant surveillance. Servo skulls floated outside his door at all hours. Armed guards in red armor stood watch with weapons that looked disturbingly biological. And every few hours, someone in robes would peer through the observation slit, take notes, and hurry away whispering prayers. "Is this normal?" Saitama asked during one of Vale's assessment sessions in the interrogation chamber. He sat on a metal chair that groaned under what should have been ordinary human weight. "Back home, people mostly just ignored me." Vale studied him across the table. Her augmetic eye had cycled through 17 different spectrums, trying to glean something, anything, about his nature. All it showed was a man. Flesh, bone, blood. Ordinary by every metric except that he'd survived Lancefire without armor. "You destroyed Imperial property. You represent an unknown variable in a galaxy where the unknown is usually hostile." "I said I was sorry about the robot guys," Saitama replied. "I didn't know they were that fragile. Everything here seems really breakable. That was the problem, Vale thought. He wasn't lying. Her interrogation training, honed across 2 decades, detected no deception. He genuinely hadn't meant to destroy the servitors, hadn't meant to create a shockwave that could annihilate asteroids. He was either the most sophisticated liar she'd ever encountered, or he genuinely didn't understand his own power. Both possibilities were terrifying. "Tell me about your origin," she said. "Where do you come from? What species are you? What is your purpose?" Saitama shrugged. "I'm human. From Earth. I was a hero for fun, but it got boring because I'm too strong. Monsters kept dying in one punch. Then I punched something. Reality broke, and I ended up here." He paused. "Do you have Earth in this? Wherever this is?" "There is only one Earth," Vale said carefully. "Holy Terra, birthplace of humanity, seat of the God Emperor. If you claim to be from Earth but don't know of the Imperium, then you're either lying or—" She trailed off. Dimensional displacement. Heretical theory. But Magos Ven had proposed it. A being from a parallel reality where humanity evolved differently, where one man could break his limiter and achieve power that rivaled— She stopped that thought before it became heresy. "Look," Saitama said, leaning forward. The chair groaned again. "I don't know anything about your Emperor or your Imperium. I just want to figure out how to get home. And maybe eat something. The rations you've been giving me taste like cardboard." Vale resisted the urge to explain that the rations were cardboard, nutritionally enriched. "When we reach Terra, you will be assessed by the High Lords of Terra themselves. They will determine your fate. Until then, you will remain in confinement." "Can I at least get better food?" Saitama asked hopefully. The adamant truth translated into real space above Terra 3 weeks later. Saitama pressed his face against the viewport of his quarters. They'd allowed him this one concession, and stared at the planet below. It looked wrong. Not wrong bad, just wrong different. Too many spires, too much gold. The entire planet seemed to be one massive city, and even from orbit he could see the pollution, the darkness, the sheer industrial brutality of it. "That's Earth?" he muttered. "What happened to it?" Behind him, Inquisitor Vale stood flanked by her full retinue. 4 crusaders in ornate armor. Magos Ven with his weapons limbs locked and loaded. Erasmus the Psyker, still pale and refusing to look directly at Saitama. And 6 stormtroopers with hellguns trained on the back of his bald head. Not that any of it would matter if he decided to resist. "That is Holy Terra," Vale corrected. "Oldest of all human worlds. The Emperor's domain. You should be honored. Few outsiders ever walk upon its sacred soil." Saitama just thought it looked depressing. Where were the parks? The shopping districts? Did people even live normal lives here? Or was everything just Gothic architecture and skulls? The shuttle ride down was tense. Vale had requisitioned a heavy transport with reinforced hull plating, void shields, and blessed armor. Saitama sat in the center, surrounded by an honor guard that was really an execution squad waiting for orders. He watched Terra grow larger through the viewport, noticing the massive orbital platforms, the ships so numerous they blocked out stars, the defense networks that could probably sterilize a continent. They really didn't trust him. Fair enough. He'd learned to accept that. The shuttle landed in the Imperial Palace's outer reception district, a space the size of a city, all marble and gold and statues of eagles. Saitama stepped out onto sacred Terran soil for the first time, and immediately noticed the air quality was terrible. How did people breathe this stuff? Waiting for them was a delegation that made Vale's retinue look like beggars. Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own guardians, 10 feet tall in their golden armor, each one a legend in Auramite. High Lords representatives in ceremonial dress that probably cost more than a planet. And tech priests whose augmentations were so extensive they looked more machine than human. At the center stood Lord Commander Militant Thrasius, representing the High Lord's military interests. His power armor was a masterwork, decorated with seals of office and purity. His face was a mask of stern judgment as he watched Saitama approach. "This is the entity?" Thrasius asked, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "This bald man in the yellow suit?" "Yes, Lord Commander," Vale replied. "I've witnessed his capabilities firsthand. He survived lance fire, destroyed combat servitors with casual contact, and we've reviewed your reports, Inquisitor." Thrasius stepped forward, towering over Saitama even without his armor's height advantage. "I am Lord Commander Militant Thrasius, speaking with the authority of the High Lords of Terra. You stand in the Emperor's domain. You will kneel." Saitama looked up at him, then at the Custodes, their guardian spears crackling with energy, then at the 100 or so armed guards positioned around the plaza, then back at Thrasius. "No thanks," he said pleasantly. "I don't really do the kneeling thing." The temperature in the plaza seemed to drop. Hands moved toward weapons. The Custodes shifted stance imperceptibly, combat algorithms activating. Thrasius's face darkened. "You dare refuse?" His voice carried the weight of absolute authority, the kind of command that made entire armies obey without question. On Terra itself? Before the Emperor's servants? Saitama scratched his cheek. "I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but where I come from, heroes don't kneel. Even when they should probably be more polite about it." He smiled apologetically. "Sorry?" For a long moment, nobody moved. The standoff stretched. Vale prepared for violence she knew her forces couldn't survive. The Custodes calculated attack vectors against a target whose defensive capabilities exceeded their databanks. Thrasius weighed his options and found them all terrible. Then a voice spoke, not with sound but directly into the minds of everyone present. A voice like the sun itself, vast and terrible and absolute. "Bring him to us." The psychic pressure of those 4 words drove half the delegation to their knees. Stormtroopers collapsed, bleeding from their noses. Even Thrasius staggered, one hand going to his head. The Custodes remained standing, but only through millennia of mental conditioning. Saitama just blinked. Huh. Did someone say something? And that, more than anything else, told the Imperium's finest exactly how catastrophically out of their depth they were. The Emperor himself had spoken with enough psychic force to flatten mortals, and the bald man in the yellow suit had barely noticed. Lord Commander Thracius swallowed his pride, his fear, his entire understanding of what was possible. The Emperor requests your presence in the throne room. Oh, cool, Saitama said, brightening. Will there be food? The procession through the Imperial Palace was the most elaborate escort Saitama had ever received, which was saying something, considering he'd once been paraded through Hero Association headquarters in front of cameras and cheering crowds. But that had been fun, or at least mildly entertaining. This felt more like being marched to an execution, except everyone seemed more afraid of him than he was of them. The corridors of the palace were absurd. Each hallway could swallow a city block. Statues of armored warriors lined walls so distant they faded into atmospheric haze. Servo skulls drifted overhead, chanting in languages Saitama didn't recognize. And everywhere, were symbols of eagles and skulls. You guys really like skulls, huh? Saitama observed as they passed a fountain carved from what appeared to be actual skulls. The custodian guard walking beside him, Tribune Valdor's second, a warrior named Acarion, didn't respond. The Golden Giants hadn't spoken once during the entire march. They simply walked in perfect formation, Guardian spears held at rest position but ready to strike in microseconds. Saitama could tell they were good, really good. Their movements had that efficiency he recognized from S-class heroes back home. He wondered if they'd be fun to spar with. Probably not. Nobody ever was. But he could hope. They descended into the deeper palace, where the architecture grew older, more worn. The golden opulence gave way to darker metals, ancient stone, and an oppressive weight that pressed down on everything. Saitama felt it like a change in air pressure before a thunderstorm. Something massive waited ahead. Something that bent reality around itself through sheer presence. Finally, they reached the throne room doors. Slabs of blessed adamantium 50 meters tall, covered in so many prayers and seals that the metal beneath was barely visible. Power crackled across their surface. Not electricity, but something deeper. Warp energy, contained and focused through millennia of ritual. Beyond these doors, Acarion said, speaking for the first time, sits the master of mankind, the emperor of the Imperium. He who has guided humanity for 10,000 years from the Golden Throne. You will show respect. Sure, Saitama agreed. He was curious now. This emperor guy sounded important. Maybe he'd have answers about the dimensional rift. And maybe, just maybe, there'd be someone interesting behind those doors. Not strong. Nobody was ever actually strong, but interesting. The doors opened silently despite their massive weight. Beyond them lay a chamber so vast it generated its own weather. Lightning flickered in the distant ceiling. The air itself hummed with power that made Vale's Augmetics spark and Erasmus whimper. At the far end, perhaps a kilometer away, something sat enthroned in machinery and golden light. Saitama walked forward. The Custodes didn't follow. They took positions flanking the entrance, honor guard and prison guards in one. Only Inquisitor Vale accompanied him, and even she stopped after 50 meters, kneeling automatically as the psychic pressure intensified. Saitama kept walking. The golden throne resolved as he approached. A massive construction of machinery and bioorganic tubing, pulsing with energy that fed into and from the figure seated at its center. The Emperor of mankind, even diminished by millennia of imprisonment, even reduced to a corpse kept alive by technology and faith. His presence was overwhelming. Psychic power radiated outward in waves that would drive mortals insane. The weight of his consciousness, pressed through the Astronomicon to guide ships across the galaxy, concentrated here at its source. Every step closer should have been harder, like walking into a hurricane made of pure will. Saitama reached the base of the throne and looked up. "Hi, I'm Saitama. Your people said you wanted to talk." For the first time in 10,000 years, the Emperor experienced something approaching surprise. His psychic might, which could obliterate demons and command armies across star systems, pressed down on the bald man standing casually before the throne. The Emperor probed, gently at first, then with increasing force, seeking to read thoughts, assess threat, understand nature. It was like pushing against a wall. No, not a wall. Walls could be broken. This was like pushing against the fundamental concept of mundane reality itself. The man was human, completely, undeniably human. No warp presence, no demon taint, no Xenos corruption, no divine spark or genetic manipulation. Just human, but compressed, condensed, as if all the potential of baseline humanity had been refined down to its purest essence and then pushed past every conceivable limit through nothing more than absurd dedication. It was impossible, and yet here he stood. "You are not of this reality." The Emperor spoke directly into Saitama's mind. The psychic voice carried enough power to crack planets. "You punched your way through dimensional barriers. Impressive, foolish. You do not belong here." "Yeah, I figured that out," Saitama replied, apparently unaware he was having a psychic conversation. "I'm trying to find a way home. Do you know anything about dimensional travel or grocery stores? I've been eating ration bars for 3 weeks." The Emperor paused. The bald man was ignoring the psychic pressure, not resisting it, not fighting it, simply not noticing it. Like someone standing in a hurricane and wondering why everyone else seemed bothered by the weather. "You survived the void, withstood lance fire, destroyed servitors with casual touch." The Emperor's mental presence intensified, pressing harder. "What are you?" "Just a guy who's a hero for fun," Saitama said. He was telling the truth. The Emperor could sense that much. No deception, no hidden agenda, just profound simplicity backed by catastrophic power. "I used to fight monsters, did 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and ran 10 kilometers every day for 3 years. My hair fell out, but I got really strong. The Emperor processed this. It made no sense. Physical training alone couldn't break the laws of reality, couldn't create someone who existed as a blind spot in the warp. Unless the master of mankind had spent 40,000 years studying human potential. He'd crafted the Primarchs, demigods of war. He'd created the Space Marines, humanity's finest warriors. He understood gene forging, psychic enhancement, demonic possession, Xenos evolution. Every path to power made sense within the framework of reality. This didn't. This was a human who'd simply decided limits didn't apply, and then proved himself correct through sheer bloody-minded dedication. No warp bargains, no genetic engineering, no forbidden knowledge, just training. Absurd, comedic, impossible training that somehow worked because he believed it would. "You are a threat," the Emperor stated, not angrily, simply factually. Your power exceeds most Primarchs. Your resistance to psychic force surpasses blanks. You cannot be controlled, cannot be predicted, cannot be defeated by conventional means. "I'm not threatening anyone," Saitama protested. "I just want to go home and maybe fight something interesting on the way." "There is nothing interesting here for you." The Emperor's consciousness pressed harder, attempting to at least understand, if not control. Khorne's strongest bloodthirsters would bore you. Necron pylons would inconvenience you. Tyranid hive fleets would annoy you. You have broken your limiter so thoroughly that challenge is impossible. Saitama's shoulders slumped. "Yeah, that's kind of my problem." For a moment, something like understanding passed between them. Two beings of immense power, separated by everything except a shared loneliness. The Emperor, trapped on his throne for 10,000 years, aware of everything but able to directly act on nothing. Saitama, free to go anywhere but unable to find anything that mattered because everything broke too easily. "We could destroy each other," the Emperor observed, "or we could coexist. The Imperium fears what it cannot control. I fear nothing, but my servants will try to eliminate you. They will fail. Millions will die in the attempt. Is that outcome acceptable to you?" "No," Saitama said immediately. "I don't want people to die. That's why I became a hero." "Then we have a problem." The Emperor's psychic might focused, not in attack, but in demonstration. Images flooded Saitama's mind, not forced, but offered. The galaxy at war, chaos erupting from the warp, Xenos empires consuming worlds, the Imperium holding together through faith and violence and the sacrifice of billions. This universe runs on blood. Heroes die here. Hope dies here. Only survival remains. Saitama absorbed the images, saw the scale of suffering, understood, finally, where he'd landed. A universe so broken that his kind of heroism, simple, direct, punch-the-monster heroism, couldn't fix it. "That's really depressing," he said quietly. "Yes, but you present a unique opportunity." The Emperor's tone shifted, became calculating. "The Imperium cannot defeat you. Chaos cannot corrupt you. You are effectively immortal and invincible. You could reshape this galaxy through force alone." "I don't want to reshape anything," Saitama objected. "I just want—" "I know. You want to go home. I cannot send you there. Regret, genuine and profound. The rift you created, sealed behind you. Dimensional barriers are not easily breached twice. You are trapped here." Saitama felt that sink in. Trapped. In a universe at war, surrounded by people who either wanted to kill him or control him. No way home, no challenges, no point. "Well," he said after a long moment, "this sucks." Agreed. The silence in the throne room stretched. Outside, the Custodes waited with perfect discipline, though Akarian's enhanced hearing detected something unprecedented. The Emperor was conversing, not commanding, not judging, actually talking with the entity that had walked casually through psychic pressure that should have liquefied his mind. Inside, Saitama was trying to process his situation. Stuck in a grim-dark future. No way home. Everyone either terrified of him or actively hostile. And this Emperor guy, who seemed like he might actually be reasonable, was trapped in a giant chair and couldn't really help. "So what now?" Saitama asked. "Your people are going to try to kill me. Killing them would be bad, and I can't leave. That's a pretty lousy situation for everyone." "It is," the Emperor agreed. "Which is why I propose an alternative. You will become my asset, officially sanctioned, given limited autonomy to act as you see fit. In exchange, you will assist the Imperium when truly existential threats emerge." "Like a job?" Saitama perked up slightly. "Do you pay?" "The Imperium provides food, shelter, transport. Though I suspect payment is not your primary concern." "No," Saitama admitted. "I just want something to do. Being bored is worse than being broke." He paused. "But I'm not joining any armies or crusades or whatever. I help people who need help. I don't conquer stuff." "Acceptable." The Emperor's presence shifted, became almost conspiratorial. "Truthfully, I do not want you near my armies. Your casual intervention would make them complacent. Soldiers who rely on an invincible savior stop being soldiers. But there are threats even the Imperium cannot face directly. Daemon princes, Catan shards, hive tyrants, entities where conventional force fails. So I'd be like emergency backup, Precisely. And in exchange, you will not be hunted. My custodes will not attempt your elimination. The Inquisition will not declare you excommunicate traitoris. You will be tolerated. Saitama considered this. It wasn't ideal, but it beat fighting off assassination attempts forever. And if there were actually strong things in this universe, demon princes sounded promising. Maybe he'd finally get a decent fight. "Okay," he said. "I'll help out when you need me, but I'm doing it my way. No torture, no killing civilians, none of that grimdark stuff I saw in those images. Your morality will be respected within reason," the Emperor replied, "though you will find this galaxy tests all principles eventually. Very well. We have an accord." The psychic pressure in the throne room suddenly intensified, not as an attack, but as a broadcast. The Emperor's will reached out across Terra, through the Astronomicon, touching the minds of every High Lord, every Custodian Tribune, every Senior Inquisitor on the throne world. The one called Saitama is declared under Imperial sanction. He acts with our authority. Any who move against him move against us. This decree is absolute. Across Terra, powerful individuals staggered under the weight of that command. Lord Commander Thracius, waiting in the outer palace, felt the Emperor's will burn into his consciousness and knew with absolute certainty that the strange, bald man was now untouchable. Inquisitor Vale, still kneeling in the throne room, received the decree directly and understood that her assessment mission had just become permanent oversight duty. The Custodes felt it most clearly. Their 10,000-year duty expanded to include one additional soul under their protection. Not guarding him, he needed no protection, but ensuring no Imperial force moved against him without direct order from the throne itself. "So," Saitama said, oblivious to the galaxy-spanning proclamation, "can I get some actual food now? And maybe a place to stay? Your ship's rations were really terrible." Custodian Akarian will provide accommodations. The palace has suitable quarters. As if summoned, Akarian entered the throne room, striding forward with measured steps until he reached conversational distance. The golden giant knelt, not to Saitama, but to the Emperor, and spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "The decree is received and understood, Master. The Adeptus Custodes acknowledges this unprecedented arrangement." The unspoken concern hung in the air. They were now protecting someone who didn't need protection and couldn't be controlled. It violated every principle of their 10,000-year duty. But the Emperor had spoken. That was enough. "Rise, Akarian." The Emperor's physical voice creaked from the throne, withered and ancient. Using his actual voice rather than psychic projection cost him dearly, but it emphasized the importance. "Take our guest to the residential wings, ensure he has sustenance and comfort, and prepare the training grounds." Akarian's head tilted fractionally. "Training grounds, Master?" He seeks challenge. Let us see how the Custodes fare against the impossible. Saitama's expression brightened for the first time since arriving in this universe. A sparring match? Really? Consider it a demonstration. The Custodes are humanity's finest, each one. A masterwork of genetic engineering, trained for centuries, capable of defeating entire armies. If anything in this universe can provide you momentary entertainment, it would be them. Finally, Saitama said, genuine enthusiasm creeping into his voice. Maybe this universe won't be completely boring after all. The custodian training grounds occupied a space beneath the palace so vast it had its own horizon. Here, the Emperor's guardians honed skills already perfected, sparred against each other with weapons that could crack tank armor, and tested themselves against combat servitors programmed with the fighting styles of every Xenos and demon encountered in 10 millennia. Saitama stood in the center of the main arena, looking around at the assembled Custodes with interest. 20 of them, a full shield company, stood in formation wearing training versions of their armor. Still Auramite, still blessed, still worth more than a hive city, but designed to withstand the punishment of their internal combat drills. Captain General Trajan Valoris himself had come to observe. The highest-ranked custodian, commander of the Emperor's personal guard, wanted to personally assess this anomaly that the Master had decreed untouchable. The Emperor has suggested a demonstration, Valoris announced, his voice carrying across the arena. You claim to seek challenge. The Adeptus Custodes are the pinnacle of human martial achievement. We shall see if you are truly beyond challenge or merely untested. Saitama stretched, touched his toes. Do I need armor or weapons or anything? You survived Lancefire unarmored, Acarian replied. I suspect armor would be redundant. Yeah, probably. Okay, I'm ready whenever you guys are. Valoris nodded to the shield company. Begin with standard engagement protocols. Assess his capabilities. Adapt as necessary. The Custodes moved. To any normal observer, they would have appeared to teleport. Centuries of training and genetic enhancement compressed into movements too fast for human eyes to track. 20 warriors, each one capable of soloing a Space Marine chapter, converged on Saitama from 20 different vectors simultaneously. Guardian spears thrust toward vital points. Power fists activated, energy crackling. Combat algorithms calculated weak points, identified kill trajectories, predicted responses. It was the most perfect coordinated assault in human history, executed by beings who existed solely to protect the Emperor. Saitama dodged. Not fast, not desperately, just stepped aside. 20 killing blows missed by millimeters. He'd moved maybe 3 feet total, but somehow every attack passed through empty space. You guys are really good, he observed. Way better than the robots. The Custodes immediately recalculated, standard protocols clearly insufficient. They split into combat groups, flanking patterns designed to eliminate space for evasion. Guardian spears extended, creating a cage of blessed Auramite and power fields. Saitama ducked under one spear, sidestepped another, and casually caught a third that thrust toward his face. The custodian wielding it, a veteran of 600 years named Callius, pulled back with enough force to uproot a tree. The spear didn't budge. Saitama held it between 2 fingers. "Sorry, is it okay if I hold this?" Saitama asked. "I don't want to break it." Callius abandoned the spear instantly, drawing a sidearm and firing in one smooth motion. Bolt rounds exploded against Saitama's chest, his face, his upheld hand. He waved away the smoke. "Okay, yeah. You guys are definitely shooting at me again. Is that just how people say hello here?" Valoris watched from the observation deck, his enhanced mind processing what his eyes were seeing and rejecting it. The entity, Saitama, wasn't fighting. He was evading, commenting, apologizing. But his movements suggested combat awareness beyond anything in the custodian databanks. He predicted attacks before they launched, positioned himself perfectly without apparent effort. And most disturbing, he was holding back so dramatically that the entire engagement was essentially meaningless. "Full engagement protocols," Valoris commanded through the Vox. "Lethal force authorized. The Emperor wants assessment. Give him assessment." The 20 Custodes responded instantly. This was no longer a sparring match. Guardian spears ignited with molecular disruption fields. Bolt weapons switched to Kraken penetrator rounds. Combat drugs flooded enhanced bloodstreams, pushing already superhuman reflexes to their absolute limits. They attacked as one perfect unit, no longer testing but executing. Spear thrusts capable of piercing Land Raider armor. Shots that could decapitate orcs at a kilometer. Coordinated strikes that had felled demon princes and slaughtered tyrannid hordes. Saitama caught a guardian's spear's blade between 2 fingers, sidestepped a point-blank bolt shot, and gently pushed a charging custodian's chest plate. The warrior, 2 tons of muscle and auramite, slid backward 30 meters, boots leaving grooves in the reinforced floor. "You want me to fight back?" Saitama asked. He sounded uncertain. "I really don't want to hurt anyone. You guys seem nice." "Show us your capability," Valoris commanded. "This is assessment, not combat. Strike Shield Captain Acharian. Full strength. He will endure." Acharian stepped forward, planting his feet, raising his guardian spear in guard position. "Come." Saitama hesitated. "Are you sure? I'm really, really strong." "We know. Strike me. That is an order." "Okay, if you're sure." Saitama threw a punch. Not his serious punch. That would be insane. Not even a particularly committed punch. Just a regular punch. The kind he'd use on a minor threat back home. His fist connected with Acharian's guardian spear, held in defensive position. The spear shattered. Blessed auramite, forged in the Emperor's own workshops, consecrated through rituals older than some planets, simply disintegrated into golden fragments. The force continued through into Acharian's armored chestplate. Adamantium cracked. Ceramite shattered. The shield captain flew backward, tumbling through the air like a discarded toy, and crashed into the arena wall hard enough to crater the reinforced stone. Silence. Acharian rose slowly from the rubble. Systems rebooting. His chest plate was destroyed, the bare muscle of his enhanced torso visible beneath. He'd survived. Barely. Another such strike would have liquefied his organs despite all his enhancements. "Oh no," Saitama said, looking at his fist in horror. "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to. I barely tapped him. Is he okay?" Valoris stared at the golden fragments drifting to the arena floor, each one a piece of a weapon that had served for centuries, destroyed casually. The warrior who'd wielded it, one of the finest in the Imperium, defeated with a fraction of a percent of his opponent's strength. "Cease engagement," Valoris commanded quietly. "Assessment complete." He activated his personal Vox, direct channel to the throne room. "Master, I have witnessed his capabilities firsthand. Your decree was merciful. Without Imperial sanction, we would have been forced to attempt his elimination. The attempt would have cost us the entire Adeptus Custodes, and we would have failed." Deep in the throne room, the Emperor's psychic presence flickered with what might have been grim satisfaction. "Yes. Now you understand why I made the choice I did. He is not an enemy we can afford. Better he remains bored and compliant than annoyed and active." Saitama stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by the Imperium's finest warriors, looking at the broken spear fragments with genuine remorse. "I really am sorry," he said to a Carian who was being tended by medici servitors. "Maybe next time I'll punch softer." The Custodes said nothing. There was nothing to say. They'd just sparred with something beyond their understanding, and it had apologized for winning. Word of the sparring match spread through Terra's upper echelons within hours. Not officially. The Custodes didn't gossip, but servo skulls had recorded the engagement. Tech priests analyzing the footage went through 17 different authentication protocols trying to prove it was corrupted data. The High Lords received sanitized reports that somehow made the situation sound even more alarming. And in the warp, something noticed. The Ruinous Powers, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh existed as fundamental forces of corruption, feeding on emotion and twisting reality itself. They'd observed Saitama's arrival with mild curiosity. A mortal who registered as absolutely nothing in the warp was unusual but not unprecedented. Blanks and pariahs existed, after all. But this was different. This mortal had just shattered a custodian's guardian spear and sent one of the Emperor's finest flying like debris. The Chaos Gods felt ripples of possibility. Not corruption potential, he had none, but entertainment value, disruption capacity, the chance to upset the eternal stalemate with the corpse emperor. In the brass citadel of Khorne, the blood god stirred on his throne of skulls. A warrior of such strength wasted on protecting the weak. Unacceptable. Such power deserved to be tested, pushed, broken, or exalted. Khorne's attention focused, and in focusing, acted. Saitama had been given quarters in the palace's residential district, a space designed for visiting dignitaries and high-ranking officials. By 41st millennium standards, it was luxurious. A bed that didn't have restraint straps, a window overlooking one of Terra's few remaining gardens, and, most importantly, a kitchen servitor that could produce actual cooked food instead of ration bars. He was attempting to make hot pot with ingredients he didn't recognize when reality tore open in his living room. No alarms, no warning. The warp breach was surgical, targeted, and powerful enough to bypass every ward and shield the Imperial palace had accumulated over 10 millennia. A portal of brass and blood materialized, and through it stepped something that made the combat servitors look like children's toys. The Bloodthirster was 12 feet of corded muscle, brass armor, and weapons forged from the essence of rage itself. Its axe, Bloodreaver, had ended star systems. Its wings spread wide enough to darken the room. Demonic power radiated from it in waves that would drive mortals insane with terror. Uzul, the Skull-Taker, had come to claim the bald warrior's head for Horn's throne. Saitama looked up from his hot pot. "Oh, hi? You need something?" Uzul spoke in a voice like grinding continents. "Khorne has marked you, mortal. Your strength is wasted in service to the corpse god. Spill blood in the blood god's name, or your skull joins the throne." "I'm kind of making dinner," Saitama replied, gesturing at his pot. "Can this wait? I haven't eaten real food in like a month." The Bloodthirster processed this response for exactly 0.2 seconds before rage override all other considerations. It swung Bloodreaver in an arc that bisected reality itself, a strike that had cleaved greater demons and shattered titans. Saitama caught the axe blade between two fingers. "Dude, I said I'm cooking." Uzul stared at its weapon, at the fingers holding it motionless, at the mortal who'd stopped a demon weapon without apparent effort. Impossible. The axe was forged from Khorne's own rage, blessed by the blood god himself. It cut through anything, everything, except, apparently, a bald man's fingers. "What are you?" Uzul roared, pulling back and swinging again, faster, harder, with enough force to split a mountain. Saitama sidestepped, letting the axe pass harmlessly, and the blade carved through his kitchen counter, his wall, and kept going until it exited the palace entirely and carved a canyon through Terra's surface 300 kilometers away. "Oh, no," Saitama said, looking at the destruction. "That was probably important architecture." Alarms shrieked across the palace. Custodes deployed in combat formation, converging on the warp breach. Psychers screamed warnings, and deep in the throne room, the Emperor's attention snapped toward the disturbance with a focus that made stars flicker. Bloodthirster. In the palace. How? Then he understood. Khorne had targeted the breach specifically, using the Chaos God's own power to pierce defenses. The Blood God wanted to test Saitama, or claim him, or simply cause maximum disruption. Custodes, maintain perimeter. Do not engage. This is Saitama's confrontation. Valoris, already sprinting toward the disturbance, received the order and reluctantly signaled his forces to hold position. They established a cordon around Saitama's quarters, weapons ready, watching through auger feeds as the impossible confrontation unfolded. Inside, Uzul had abandoned strategy. The Bloodthirster simply attacked over and over with the inexhaustible fury of Khorne himself. Each swing could end civilizations. Each strike carried enough demonic power to unmake souls. The apartment, and a significant chunk of the surrounding palace, disintegrated under the onslaught. Saitama dodged everything, not desperately, almost absent-mindedly. He'd fought fast opponents before. This demon was quick, but Flashy Flash had been quicker. Garou in his final form had been more technical. This was just angry. "Are you done yet?" Saitama asked after the Bloodthirster's 47th consecutive attack. "Because my hot pot is definitely ruined now and I'm getting annoyed." "Then fight," Uzul bellowed. "Show your strength. Spill blood. Khorne demands combat." "I don't really do the whole blood for the blood god thing," Saitama said. "I'm a hero. I help people. You're kind of doing the opposite of that." Uzul paused, massive chest heaving. In 8,000 years of service to Khorne, it had never encountered an opponent who simply refused to engage with proper violence, who treated a battle like an inconvenience, whose only apparent concern was ruined food. "You dare mock the blood god's champion?" "I'm not mocking anyone," Saitama protested. "I just want to eat dinner and maybe take a bath. Is that too much to ask?" The Bloodthirster's rage reached critical mass. This mortal would die. Had to die. Khorne's will demanded it. Uzul raised Blood Reaver overhead, channeling every iota of demonic power its form could contain, preparing a strike that would split Terra itself if necessary. Saitama sighed. "Okay, fine. You want a fight? I'll give you a fight." He assumed a combat stance. Nothing fancy, just the basic form he'd practiced 10,000 times during his training. Drew back his fist and spoke 2 words he reserved for opponents who genuinely annoyed him. Consecutive, normal punches. His fists blurred. To the Custodes watching on augur feeds, it appeared as if Saitama's hand simply multiplied. 1 fist became 10, became 100, became 1,000. Each punch was normal by his standards, which meant each one carried enough kinetic force to pulverize a tank. The Bloodthirster, 12 feet of demonic armor and Khorne's blessed rage, simply came apart, not destroyed in one dramatic strike, just systematically dismantled by a barrage of punches too fast and too numerous to count. Brass armor cracked, demonic flesh bruised, bones that had endured millennia of combat broke. Uzul tried to scream but couldn't. Its jaw had already been shattered by punch number 47. It tried to swing its axe, but the weapon tumbled from nerveless fingers after punch number 93. It tried to flee back through its portal, but the dimensional gateway collapsed after punch number 112 disrupted the warp energies maintaining it. When Saitama stopped, the Bloodthirster of Khorne, Uzul the Skull-Taker, champion of the blood god and harvester of 1 billion souls, lay in a broken heap on the floor. Not dead. Demons couldn't truly die, but banished, shattered, sent screaming back to the warp where it would take centuries to reform. Saitama looked at his fists. I think I went overboard. I just wanted him to leave so I could eat. In the warp, Khorne observed the outcome and felt something he rarely experienced: respect. The mortal had met overwhelming violence with greater violence, had broken a bloodthirster through pure martial skill. This was a warrior worthy of notice. The blood god's attention intensified. More champions would come. Stronger ones. Uzul had been merely the first test. Tzeentch, watching from his impossible fortress, saw different possibilities. The mortal couldn't be corrupted. His soul was too simple, too focused, but perhaps manipulated, directed, used as an unknowing piece in greater schemes. Nurgle chuckled from his garden, seeing only inevitability. Everything decayed, everything died. Even this impossibly strong mortal would eventually face entropy. Perhaps not today, not tomorrow, but Grandfather Nurgle could wait. He always waited. Slaanesh alone showed no interest. The mortal experienced no excess, sought no sensation, desired nothing beyond basic needs. Boring, unworthy of the Prince of Pleasure's attention. But 3 of the 4 ruinous powers had now marked Saitama, each for different reasons. The game had begun. The Custodes swept in after the demon's banishment, securing the area and erecting new wards. Valoris approached Saitama, who was standing in the wreckage of his quarters, looking genuinely upset. "The demon is banished," Valoris stated. "You have done the Imperium a service. Uzul has plagued us for millennia." "Great," Saitama said flatly. "But my dinner's ruined, my apartment's destroyed, and I still haven't had a bath. Does this kind of thing happen a lot here?" "You are on Terra, the most heavily defended world in the Imperium. Demon breaches are exceptionally rare." Valoris paused. "Until now. The Ruinous Powers have clearly noticed you. This will not be the last incursion." "So I'm going to keep getting attacked by demons while trying to do normal things?" "Almost certainly, yes." Saitama's shoulders slumped even further. "This universe really does suck." Valoris, despite himself, felt something approaching sympathy. The entity before him possessed power beyond comprehension, could defeat demons, best Custodes, survive anything the galaxy threw at him. And all he wanted was to eat hot pot in peace. "We will assign you new quarters," Valoris offered, "with enhanced wards and a fully stocked kitchen. Consider it compensation for your assistance." "Can I get ingredients that aren't dried or canned?" Saitama asked hopefully. "I will personally ensure the finest ingredients Terra can provide." "Okay." Saitama brightened slightly. "That's something, at least." As the Custodes began damage assessment, the demon's attack had carved a canyon through several palace districts. Tech priests calculated the structural damage and started praying to the Omnissiah for guidance on repairs. Inquisitor Vale, who'd watched the entire confrontation from a safe distance, updated her reports with shaking hands. Subject designation, Saitama. Threat level, beyond classification. Demon engagement, successful banishment of greater demon with minimal effort. Recommendation, maintain current diplomatic stance. Under no circumstances attempt hostile action. And deep in the throne room, the Emperor contemplated this new variable in the eternal war. A warrior strong enough to banish bloodthirsters, simple enough to be predictable, moral enough to be reliable, and completely, utterly trapped in a universe that would never stop attacking him. "This will be problematic," he observed to no one. "The Chaos Gods will not relent. They found a new toy, and toys that cannot break are the most entertaining to them." But perhaps that was acceptable. Better the Ruinous Powers focus on an invincible target than on the Imperium's actual vulnerabilities. Better they waste champions attacking someone who would simply punch them back to the warp. Saitama, the Emperor realized, might be the most effective distraction humanity had ever stumbled upon. If only the bald man knew how much cosmic attention he'd just attracted by asking for hot pot ingredients. 3 months into his stay on Terra, Saitama had established what he considered a reasonably normal routine. Wake up, exercise, though he'd stopped after the first week when his morning jog had accidentally created a new tectonic fault line. Eat breakfast. Help with whatever crisis the Imperium was panicking about that day. Eat lunch. Try to find entertainment. Eat dinner. Sleep. The crises came frequently. Khorne had sent 4 more bloodthirsters after Uzul's defeat, each supposedly stronger than the last. Saitama had punched them all back to the warp. Tzeentch had attempted manipulation through elaborate schemes involving false prophecies and temporal paradoxes. Saitama had ignored them because they seemed complicated and boring. A Nurgle plague daemon had manifested in his kitchen. He'd punched it so hard it forgot how to exist. The pattern was clear. Chaos wanted something from him. Entertainment, corruption, destruction, something. And he just wanted to be left alone. The Imperium, meanwhile, had shifted from viewing him as a threat to viewing him as an extremely dangerous asset that needed careful management. Which is why Inquisitor Vale now served as his official liaison, a job she'd never wanted but couldn't refuse. "There's a situation in Segmentum Pacificus," Vale explained, standing in Saitama's new quarters, considerably more fortified than the last ones, and decorated with actual furniture instead of just military efficiency. "A Necron tomb world has awakened. Overlord Thotech the Calculating has already sterilized 3 Imperial planets. Fleet assets are engaged but taking catastrophic losses." Saitama looked up from his manga, one of the few pieces of home he'd managed to recreate by describing it to confused artisan servitors. "Necrons, those are the robot skeleton guys, right? Xenos constructs of living metal, yes, extremely durable. This particular overlord commands Gauss weaponry that can disassemble matter at the molecular level. Sounds annoying." "Annoying," Vale repeated flatly. "He's killed 18 billion people in 2 weeks. The High Lords are considering exterminatus on the remaining worlds to deny him resources." Saitama set down his manga. The numbers still bothered him. 18 billion. Back home, if a monster threatened even one city, every hero would mobilize. Here, that was just Tuesday. "You want me to stop him?" The Emperor requests your intervention. Yes. A transport is prepared. Estimated travel time is 3 weeks through the warp. 3 weeks? Saitama groaned. Can't I just jump there? Jump through the void, across light years of space. Vale's augmetic eye twitched. She'd spent 3 months with Saitama and still couldn't predict what ridiculous suggestion he'd make next. No, that's impossible. Have you tried? No one has tried because it violates every known law of... She stopped. With Saitama, those laws were more like suggestions. You know what? I'm not going to say it's impossible, because you'll probably do it anyway just to prove a point. I mean, if I punch in the right direction really hard, I should go flying that way, right? I did it in space before when I was fighting that moon guy. Vale processed this. He'd fought someone on a moon. Of course he had. If you launch yourself through space at high velocity, you'll miss your target by millions of kilometers. Space is vast and I'm pretty good at aiming. She gave up. 3 months had taught her when arguments were futile. Fine. The coordinates are being transmitted to you. Good luck not overshooting into another galaxy. 20 minutes later, Saitama stood on the palace's highest spire, looking up at the stars. A custodian tactical team had helped calculate trajectory, not because they thought it would work, but because refusing seemed pointless. He'd been given the direction and approximate distance to Segmentum Pacificus. Remember, Valoris reminded him via Vox. Void travel without a ship is, impossible. I got it. Saitama crouched, drawing back his fist. See you guys later. Save some of that good Terran beef for when I get back. He punched. The kinetic force of his jump shattered every window in the palace. The spire cracked. The air displacement created a localized hurricane, and Saitama launched into space so fast that he broke Terra's orbit in 2.3 seconds, punched through the system's orbital defenses before they could even register his trajectory, and disappeared into the void like a very confused, very bald missile. Valoris watched the trajectory data. He's going to miss. The margin of error is... He paused. The data updated. Somehow, impossibly, Saitama had adjusted his trajectory mid-flight, with nothing to push against, in hard vacuum. How is he steering? One of the tech priests suggested maybe he was punching in different directions to course correct. The rest decided not to think about it too hard. Their reality was fragile enough already. Saitama had discovered that punching in space was actually pretty fun. Each punch created thrust, letting him navigate like the world's worst starship. The void was boring, just darkness and distant stars, but at least nobody was shooting at him or trying to recruit him for crusades. After what felt like a few hours, time was weird in space. He spotted his destination, a planet wrapped in green energy, surrounded by geometric ships that looked more like artwork than vehicles. Necron Fleet. Had to be. He adjusted trajectory one more time and descended toward the planet's surface like a meteor, capes streaming behind him. The Necron Fleet's Gauss arrays tracked his approach, calculated threat level, and opened fire with enough firepower to vaporize an Imperial battleship. The beams hit him. Green energy washed over his body. At the molecular level, The Gauss technology tried to disassemble his physical form, converting matter into energy. Saitama felt it like a mild static shock. Tingly. He crashed into the planet's surface near what appeared to be a massive pyramid made of living metal. Necron warriors turned toward the impact crater in perfect synchronization, their weapons raising to firing position. War scarabs swarmed, canoptech constructs emerged from underground passages, and from the pyramid's entrance came Overlord Thotek the Calculating, a being of living metal who'd ruled for 60 million years. His eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence as he assessed the intruder. Organic, unaugmented, standing in a crater wearing absurd yellow clothing. "Identify yourself, primitive," Thotek's voice synthesized from speakers that predated human civilization. "This world is claimed by the Sautek dynasty. Your presence is an insult to beings who ruled when your species was scavenging in caves." "Hi," Saitama said, climbing out of his crater. "I'm Saitama. I'm here to ask you to stop attacking people. They're pretty upset about the whole killing billions thing." Thotek processed this request. An organic was asking him, the calculating, master of probability matrices and temporal algorithms, to stop. The audacity was almost amusing. Almost. "I do not negotiate with cattle. Your Imperium is built on worlds that belong to us. We merely reclaim what was stolen. Now, remove yourself or be removed." "I'd really rather you just stopped," Saitama said reasonably. "Nobody else has to get hurt." Thotek raised one metal hand. Every Necron warrior on the planet received firing coordinates simultaneously. "Eliminate the intruder." 3,000 Gauss flares opened fire in perfect unison. Green energy converged on Saitama from every direction, creating a killing field that would disassemble molecules, annihilate atoms, reduce matter to base energy. When the firing stopped, Saitama was still standing, looking at his slightly singed glove. "Okay, that's actually starting to damage my costume. Can you not?" Thotek's probability matrices had never been wrong. His calculations were perfect across 60 million years. But every equation involving the organic returned impossible results. The being should not exist, should not survive, should not remain casual while bathed in disassembly beams. "What are you?" Thotek asked, and for the first time in millennia, there was something approaching uncertainty in his voice. "Just a guy who's a hero for fun. Last chance. Stop attacking those planets, or I'm going to have to stop you." Thotek made a decision. If probability failed, apply overwhelming force. He activated protocols dormant for eons. Deep beneath the planet's surface, a celestial orrery fragment awakened. Technology capable of manipulating stars themselves. Enough power to end solar systems. The ground split open. A construct of living metal rose, dwarfing the pyramid. A weapon platform so advanced that human scientists would spend lifetimes trying to understand a single component. Its main cannon charged, drawing energy from the planet's core. "Observe extinction, primitive," Thotek declared. The weapon fired. A beam that could shatter planets, compressed stellar energy focused through technology older than civilizations, struck Saitama directly. He leaned into it, like pushing against a strong wind. The beam was impressive, probably the most powerful thing that had hit him since arriving in this universe. He could actually feel it, not pain, but pressure, force. It was almost nice. "Finally," Saitama said, smiling slightly. Something with some weight behind it. He started walking forward, into the beam, against the planet-killing weapon. Each step created craters, but he kept advancing, casual as someone walking through rain. Thotak's probability matrices shattered. This was impossible. Impossible. Nothing survived the celestial orrery's output. Nothing. He diverted more power, drawing from the entire tomb world, channeling energy that would kill the planet itself if sustained too long. The beam intensified to levels that made reality scream. Space-time bent. Gravity fluctuated. Matter in the surrounding kilometers began to destabilize. Saitama reached the weapon platform's base and looked up at it. "This is pretty good. You're definitely stronger than those demons. But..." He drew back his fist. "I think we're done here." Serious punch. He hit the weapon platform, not the planet, not the tech, just the device. One punch, properly serious this time. The celestial orrery fragment, a marvel of technology that had endured 60 million years, simply ceased to exist, vaporized, along with everything within a 300-kilometer radius. The shockwave carved canyons across continents. The sky turned white from displaced energy. When the light faded, Saitama stood in the center of a perfectly circular crater that had glass-smooth sides from melted rock. Thotak stood at the crater's edge, staring down at the organic who just destroyed in seconds what had taken his civilization millennia to build. "How?" Thotak's voice was barely synthesized. "You are organic, fragile, temporary. You should be dust." "I did 100 push-ups every day," Saitama replied, dusting off his gloves. "Now, are you going to stop attacking people, or do I need to punch you too?" Thotak, the calculating, ran 1,000,000 probability scenarios. Every single one ended with his termination if he continued hostilities. He'd ruled for 60 million years by knowing when to advance and when to withdraw. This was withdrawal. "The Sautek dynasty acknowledges your strength," he said, each word costing him pride accumulated over eons. "We will enter dormancy. For now." "Great!" Saitama brightened. "See? Nobody else has to get hurt. You guys can go back to sleep, and I can go home and finally try that recipe I've been thinking about." As Thotak initiated tomb protocols and the Necron fleet began withdrawing, one thought dominated his ancient consciousness. In 60 million years of existence, across countless wars and civilizations, he'd never encountered anything like this. And he hoped, with every circuit in his mechanical being, that he never would again. Saitama looked up at the stars, trying to remember which direction Terra was. Hopefully, he'd aimed right coming here. The return trip might be trickier. 6 months after crashing into the 41st millennium, Saitama had become an accepted, if unsettling, fixture of the Imperium. Not celebrated, not controlled, simply tolerated as a force of nature who happened to help humans while complaining about food and missed supermarket sales. The High Lords stopped analyzing him, the Inquisition stopped classifying him, and even the Custodes quit running threat assessments. He punched threats, saved civilians, and lived his strange new life. The Chaos Gods lost interest. Khorne sent occasional challengers out of habit. The rest found him too simple to manipulate. Xenos factions learned fast. Necrons logged him as a void. Tyranids labeled him non-nutritious, and Orcs absolutely loved him. Only the Emperor understood what he represented, proof that power didn't have to corrupt. A sliver of hope in humanity's darkest age. Saitama remained oblivious, spending his days punching demons, Tyranids, Orcs, and even a rogue AI. He trained a few guardsmen, mostly by telling them to do 100 push-ups, and continued to suffer chronic boredom. Nothing here could take more than one serious hit. One evening, Inquisitor Vale summoned him to the Golden Throne. The Emperor spoke directly. "Saitama, I have found a way to send you home. A warp-based portal was possible, but only briefly, at immense cost, and with one condition. If Saitama returned home, he could never come back. And without him, threats he'd casually erased would slaughter trillions. Trillions. The number hit harder than any foe he'd met here. If he stayed, he'd save lives, but remain bored forever. If he left, he'd return to his old apartment, old friends, and a universe that might finally offer a challenge." The Emperor left the choice to him. Saitama chose time. 3 months to think. Walking out, he admitted to Vale that being a hero here felt like obligation, not fun. But people were people, and he couldn't ignore them, not when his absence meant catastrophe. He looked out over Terra's endless twilight, missing grocery shopping more than anything. In a universe of soldiers and survivors, he'd been the lone exception. And soon, the Imperium would learn whether that exception would remain, or vanish back to a universe that might still be waiting for him. 3 months to choose. 3 months to decide if he'd ever see home again. The Emperor protects. More stories await.